Hello everyone, in our last video we covered functions, so we created a simple function and we called our function from our main function. Now in this video we're going to talk about using parameters, and parameters are variables that we have in our main function, and we can pass these parameters from our main function into one of our sub functions, and then we can go and use these parameters to create something, right? So a simple example for this might be, let's say in our main function here we declare two variables, maybe we call them num1 and num2, and then we want to pass in num1 and num2 into a secondary function. So we want to pass our two variables into this function here, and then within this function we want to go and add these two variables together, and we want to just print it out. So we'll console log the sum of the two variables that we pass in. So let's start off by creating two variables. So we'll leave our console.log hello in here just so we can see it being displayed out here in our console before anything happens. So after our console log hello gets displayed, we're going to initialize two variables, and we're going to say, let's call them num1, and let's set it equal to the number 5, and then we can say let, and we'll call this variable num2, and we'll set this equal to the number 6. We've got these two numbers, num1, num2, and now we want to go and pass these two numbers into our function. Now our function at the moment is called Ryan, so let's go and call our function. So if you remember from last time, we say our function name followed by an opening and a closing round bracket, and we want to pass num1 and num2 in as variables. So we just simply get num1 and we paste it in here, and then we put a comma and then a space, and then we put num2 because that's the second number that we want to pass in. But let's go and run this for a minute, okay? Because this is not going to work for us. So if we go and hit run, we get hello world being displayed. Okay, so we're not really getting what we want. So if we look at this, we can see hello is being displayed and world's being displayed because we've called our Ryan function. But as far as our num1 and our num2, there's nothing really happening, right? We're not seeing num1, num2, or they're not being added, or nothing's really happening. So the problem with this is we're actually passing num1 and num2 into this function variable, into this function, which is Ryan, but this function is not printing this num1 or this num2 out. So maybe we want to try by doing that first. So I could say console.log, and then maybe I put in num1 here, okay? So let's go up and try and run this and see what we get. So now we get 5, right? Okay, so we're getting the number 5 displayed out, but what if I wanted to console log num1 plus num2? And I go and run this and see what output I get. So I get 11, which is the correct answer, but this is using num1 and num2. What if I wanted to shorten this when it's being passed into my function? So what if I said in1 and in2? So let's go and run this again, and I can see that I get 11 again, right? But what if I go and put n1 and n2 inside my console log here? Okay, so you'd be thinking maybe I should get the exact same output. So if I go and run this, I get the exact same output, and that's because I'm passing these numbers, num1 and num2, into the Ryan function. But then when I'm getting to the Ryan function, I'm renaming my parameters. Again, our parameters being num1 and num2. So I'm changing their names from num1 to n1, and I'm changing num2 to n2. So for example, if I delete these and I try and run this, we're going to run into a problem, because when I tried this before, I used num1 and num2, but now I'm trying to print out n1 plus n2, but we don't really know what this is because we haven't defined it inside our function here as parameters. So let's go and run this and see what we get. And again, you can see we get an error. And basically what it's saying is it doesn't really understand what n1 is because it can't find n1. So I need to go and put n1 back in here along with a comma and n2. And now it knows that n1 and n2 are parameters that we're getting in from this Ryan function. And then we go back and see where this Ryan function is called. And we can see that it's been passed in num1 and num2. And if we go back again, we can see num1 and num2 are actually these two numbers here, okay? So if I go and run this time, we should get our original result with hello, and then our number, which is 11, and then our world printed out. So calling this function Ryan isn't a great name. So we might say maybe add nums. That seems like a better name than Ryan, because add nums makes more sense because that's exactly what we're doing within this function. So if we go and run this now, again, remember, we haven't changed this here. So if we go and run this, we're going to run into a little bit of an issue. And you can see we've got another error similar to before. We forgot to change the name from Ryan to add nums. That's super important. So if we go and run this again, we should get the previous result. And so we do. Hello, 11, and world. So this is the power that we have with passing in variables. And the reason why it's good to have these parameters named rather than using these num1 or num2 variables is because we don't always know what num1 and num2 are. So for example, this add nums could be called multiple times, and it's not just passing in num1 and num2, but it's passing in loads of different combinations of numbers. So I could have, let's say, a num3 here and a num4. So I might just go and copy this and paste it in. I need to change these names. So I'm going to change that to num3 and num4. And I'm going to change this from 5 to 15. And I'm going to change this from 6 to 10. Okay, so now rather than going and changing this and changing this, I can just go and change this. So I no longer want to pass in num1 and num2. Now I want to pass in num3, which is 15, and I want to pass in num4. And if I go and run this now again, I'll see my output as 25, because 25 is equal to 15 plus 10. Now if I still had, let's say, num1 and num2 in here, if I go and run this again, now I will see that I get this hello 11 world. And this is not right because I've created this function add nums, and I've called the function add nums, and I've passed in the number 3 and the number 4, but that's not what I'm getting. I'm getting the total of num1 and num2. That's because num1 and num2 are within my function. They're hard coded in there, and we don't want that. We want to be able to access whatever numbers are passed into the function. So I'm going to change this back to n1 and n2, and if I go and run this again, we should see our previous result, and so we do. We see the number 25 being displayed.